السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We often hear the news about someone's death and not give it much thought. But then when we hear about the death of someone whom we know, especially if they were young and healthy, it somewhat surprises us, as if we were not expecting it. Well, I got the news about someone whom I knew and had not seen for a while passed away at fairly young age and healthy. That is why I changed the topic I was going to talk about this week to the topic of receiving a wake-up call every time we hear someone died. Something we really need to reflect upon and think that someday, sometime, I will be gone too, and people will be talking about me being gone. Am I ready for it? This is why often going to a funeral or passing by a cemetery serves as a reminder. Although life is a precious gift, and though its loss is grievous and painful to the survivors, no one can deny the fact that as surely as human beings start this life involuntarily to spend some time in this temporary guest house, which we call the world, each of us ultimately faces death. As the Quran says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم كل نفس ذائقة الموت وإنما توفون أجوركم يوم القيامة. Every soul shall have a taste of death, and only on the day of judgment shall you be paid your full recompense. Chapter 3, verse 185. Everyone will taste death. For some, death will taste sweet with delight and happiness. And for some, death will be bitter with pain and punishment, depending on how they conducted themselves in this life. In many people, lack of awareness, absence of faith, iman, and the failure to adequately understand the nature of death causes dread, worry, and insecurity, for they make it appear as a terrible nightmare, rather than looking at it as a fact of life, or part of life, or part of their existence which comes to an end. They say, oh, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it. Or change the subject. Death is such a depressing thing to talk about. وَلَا يَتَمَنَّوْنَهُ أَبَدًا بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. But never will they express their desire for death because of the deeds their hands have sent on before them, because being afraid of what they have done in this world. The insecurity and fear comes from the unknown. However, for Muslims who believe, they have been given plenty of warnings in the Quran. Maulana Rumi says, O you who are trying to escape from death in fear, it is you yourself that you fear. Use your intellect. Perhaps it is your expression that is ugly, and not the expression of death. For your soul is a tree, on which death is just a leaf. We are often so engrossed in our worldly pursuits that the remembrance of death does not occur to us. The Messenger of God, peace be upon him, said, the wisest person is the one who often remembers death. Nowadays, when a person dies, the family and close relatives grieve over the deceased. After some time, all is forgotten, and instead much attention is given to the inheritance. So much so they begin to have disputes over it, to fight over it. The wealth of the the person who passed away is valued more than the lessons learned from his death. If we remember it frequently, we would certainly prepare for it. By the way, it is not about just crying when our loved ones are gone, as none of those tears really help the deceased. They are not even aware of it, as their soul, ruh, leaves this world. All that crying and caring should be done when the person is alive, so he can benefit from it. The money, the time, the good words we spend for the dead should be given to them when they are alive, so they can benefit from it. Subhanallah, parents like to see their children's love and children's caring, or even sometimes children's tears for them while they are alive, when they can feel and share, not after they're gone. Same with other members of the family or close friends. We need to care for them, love them, give them good words, all the things we say in the funeral while these people are alive, so they can benefit from it. Once they're gone, our attitude as Muslims should be الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Those who say when afflicted with misfortune, with calamity, to Allah we belong and to Him is our return. Chapter 2, verse 156. That means while those who passed away, like parents or children or family members or a dear friend, were so dear to us, but never really belonged to us. We all belong to Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to Him we shall return. This is the attitude of a believer. According to Quran, قُلِ اللَّهُ يحييكم ثم يميتكم ثم يجمعكم إلى يوم القيامة لا ريب فيه ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. It is God who gives you life, then causes you to die, and then He gathers you all to the day of resurrection, of which there is no doubt, though most people do not comprehend, do not understand. Chapter 45, verse 26. As Muslims, we do believe life does not end with death. It just transitions to another state. One chapter in our life closes and another opens. We also believe that once we die, we never die again. It is said God has destined 3 places for human to live in. One here on earth, and the other 2, heaven and hell, after the day of judgment. This passage establishes Muslims' view of death, which begin with promise that the eternal human soul is God-given, and that after physical death, or when body dies, there is an eventual resurrection, qiyamah, and the day of judgment, Yawm ad-Din. A person's eternal fate, either paradise or hell, is determined at the final judgment, when humanity will be sorted and God will determine their ultimate destiny. At that time, فَأَمَّا مَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. Those whose good deeds are heavy on the scales will have a pleasant life, but the one whose good deeds are light will have the bottomless pit for the home. Chapter 101, verses 6 through 9. Here, of course, the scale and weight, which can be heavy or light, do not really reflect to a physical scale, but a scale that measures the value of our deeds. The value of our deeds. Of course, not all deeds are valuable and given credit for. That is why we need to understand what deeds will give us the best return on investment on that day, have the highest or heaviest value in that day. Between death and resurrection day, the soul remains in a state reflecting the life of the person, the life that person lived, in sort of what I call the waiting room. However, in reality, I must reflect on my life while I am in this world and see what faults, what shortcomings I have, what sins I have committed or continue to commit, and try to stop them, repent, and turn them to good deeds, as good deeds will be the only currency in that day. What do I have to show for in front of Allah Azza wa Jal? That is the day we do not want to be empty-handed. We need to think about and re-examine our situation at this very moment while we are alive and breathing, because death can come at any moment. Of course, we do get reminders from time to time when someone we know and live dies. We should go to his or her funeral and see them get buried and think that one day I will be put in a grave and someday they will be putting dirt over my body. I know it is in our nature, while we know death is a fact, yet in back of our mind we think it's not happening to me. Not yet anyway, or I still have time. Going to a burial is not really for the deceased, since we can just pray for him from anywhere. He does not benefit from our crying and panting. It is really to our benefit to reflect, now that he's gone, his hands are cut from this world, and may Allah have mercy on him and forgive him. What is my takeaway from this? What does this event remind me of? What is it I need to do while I'm alive? Once I stop breathing, none of the issues, relationships, problems, worries, ambitions in this life matter anymore. Death is a mystery to all human beings, irrespective of their faith, color, nationality, ethnicity, social, economic, or religious background. The process of death that every person will go through is also a taboo. It's not really discussed on a regular basis, nor is it easy to go through or even talk about or write about. The following is a summary of the verses revealed in the Quran about the process of death and the pain that a person has to go through. A sample of it. In Surah Al-Qaf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us that the state of death is a state of unconsciousness. وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةَ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنْتَ مِنْهُ تَحِيدٌ. And the stupor of death will bring truth before his eyes. This was the thing which you were trying to escape. Chapter 50, verse 19. Yusuf Ali, in his commentary, number 4955, says the following regarding this verse. What is stupor unconsciousness to this probationary life will be the opening of the eyes to the next world. For death is the gateway between the two. Once through the gateway, man will realize how the things which he neglected or looked upon as remote are the intimate realities. And the things which seemed large in his eyes in this world were shadows that have fled. The things he wanted to avoid are the things that have really come to pass. both good and evil will realize the truth now in its intensity. In Surah Al-Waqi'ah, the inevitable event, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that when the soul reaches the throat, no one can bring life back. As it explicitly says, فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلْقُومِ أَنْتُمْ حِينَئِذٍ تَنْظُرُونَ وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنْتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Then, why do you not intervene when the soul of a dying man reaches the throat, and you all the while sit there and watch? But we are nearer to him than you, and yet you don't see. Then why don't you, if you are exempt from future account, call back the soul, if you are true in your claim? Chapter 56, verses 83 through 87. Allah here challenges the one who rejects the life after death, or what happens after death, and says, once that person is dead, he's gone, and no arrogant person in this world, no power in this world can bring him back. Now, expression at the time of death are important and reflect the person's view on death. And it's interesting. Couple of examples. When Abu Bakr was dying, his daughter recited a poem to him. He told her to recite a verse from the Quran in Surah Qaf, the same verse we just recited, and the stupor of death come in truth. This was the thing which you were trying to escape. Chapter 50, verse 19. Then he told her to pick up his two pieces of clothing, wash them, and then use them as his funeral attire, as his kafan, body covering. Then he said, it is more important for the living to have new clothing than the dead. It was narrated by Muhammad, the son of Imam al-Hassan, that when Imam al-Hussein recognized that people had already surrounded him, he realized that he was going to be killed. He said to his companions, quote, "You have seen what is going on. Life has changed. People are full of ingratitude. Favors don't exist. My life is like someone on an unhealthy farm. Don't you see that truth, haqq, is not being practiced? Falsehood is not corrected? Therefore, a strong believer, a true believer, loves to meet Allah Azza wa Jal. I see death as a happiness and life with criminals as a crime." Unquote. So those are two examples of expressions. Now, Dr. Hathout draws an example when it comes to life and death. He says, imagine that people set out on a journey, and during this journey they had to transit through a certain place. So they stopped and went out shopping. Some of them, unfortunately, spent their money on items that they could not take on the rest of the journey, things too cumbersome or not suitable for the final destination. Others spent their money on things they could take with them, that which would make their lives happy and comfortable in the final destination. We all might think the first group was so short-sighted or even laugh at them. But unfortunately, this behavior is so common among people, including even some Muslims. So, so many people focus very hard on the life here, that when they will get to the other side, will wish they had gotten ready for that final destination. Quran points out this fact multiple times, and the fact that we will be asked how we implemented Allah's commands. We must then realize this life is only a transit point, and the everlasting life begins after we reach the final destination. As such, we need to shop for things that will help us in the final destination. A noteworthy synopsis of Mother Teresa, who passed away in 1997, while serving as a nun and a teacher in the Loreto order, God had a special call for her to serve him and serve the poorest of the poor. Thus, she founded the Order of the Missionaries of Charity in 1950 in the filthy slums of Calcutta in India. The way it happened was, one day she found a poor dying woman in a heap of trash. Her body was bitten by maggots, ants, and rats. The mother carried her to a safe place, cleaned her, and gave all possible medical attention and loving care to her. The woman's life could not be saved, but she died with a sweet smile on her face. She died with dignity. Mother Teresa remained close to her till her death. This incident gave her the inspiration to start a home for the dying, where people could die with dignity, receiving tender care and affectionate attention till the last moment of their life. In 1952, she opened the Nirmal Hriday, meaning pure heart, as a home for the dying. Dying, destitute people brought to the Nirmal Hriday received the religious rites of their own faith before their death. The Christians received the last rites of the Holy Liturgy. The Hindus received the holy water from the sacred river. And the Muslims could hear the recital of the Holy Quran while approaching death. Therefore, they could die in faith and dignity, with the feeling that they were wanted and loved. This home was meant as a gift to provide a beautiful, dignified death to people who lived like animals, to come to this house with the feeling that they are loved and wanted. She came to be known as the Saint of the Gutters. She spent all the money received as gifts, donations, and awards for the care of the poor, the sick, and the destitute people. She accepted the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979 in the name of the unwanted, unloved, and uncared people. The mission of the Missionaries of Charity, according to her, is to, quote, care for the hungry, the naked, the homeless, the crippled, the blind, the lepers, all those people who feel unwanted, unloved, uncared for throughout the society, people that have become a burden to the society and are shunned by everyone, unquote. To persons who volunteered to join her in acts of charity, she said, quote, what I can do, you cannot. What you can do, I cannot. but together we can do something beautiful for God, unquote. Her words, her vision, her words reveal what her mission was. She put it this way, quote, "We are all pencils in the hands of God. In this life we cannot do big things. We can only do small things with great love," unquote. Her life is an inspiration to many involved in acts of kindness and charity. May God rest her soul. As mentioned earlier, when we go to a funeral, it does not register in our minds that I can be in this grave at any time. We think that that day is so far away. Well, even if we live to be 100 or 120 years old, death will come. May Allah grant us the wisdom to be mindful of death and to realize that death is not an evil, but the inevitable. Death is not the enemy, and as a matter of fact, it should be the friend of the believer, because shortly after his death, the believer will face his Creator. If he has prepared himself before that day, then he will find eternal bliss and happiness in the hereafter, inshallah. It is a sound advice to seek the goodness of this world, to seek wealth, to seek happiness and prosperity. All these are legitimate and possible for a believer, but should not be his basic concern or have strong attachment to them. The concern should be, how am I going to utilize this? How can I benefit from it in the final destination? Because the way you utilize your gifts may lead you to eternal hell or eternal heaven. May Allah save us from even momentary forgetfulness of death and our final destination. We ask Allah to give us the guidance and the foresight to watch our steps in this life and do whatever brings us His blessings in this life and hereafter. We ask Allah to make us among those to whom He will say in that day, "O rested soul, come back to your Lord, well pleased and well pleasing. Enter the company of my servants and enter my paradise. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي." بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام على من اتبع الهدى.